Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another Left Turn Workshop tutorial. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at creating a cinematic. Okay. I've already posted this on the YouTube channel, but just to get a sense of what we're going to be working on, let me just play through it real quick.
It was a time of war, and so our priests had gotten it into their heads that the best course of action would be to summon wind and rains and fire and the earth, and bid them to deliver us a savior. And so they did. So they did.
Okay, so there you have it. That's kind of what we're going to be doing. I'm not going to walk through the entire cinematic here, but I'm going to show you all of the techniques that are actually used in the cinematic. So we're going to start with this shot here at the beginning. Take a look at animating the camera, adding characters to our sequence, adding some animations, and also manipulating the focus distance to get some nice depth of field, right? So it'll be step one, then we're going to shoot over to this fire scene, okay, and we'll see how to add some particle effects inside of our animation sequence in order to get things looking pretty cool. Then we're going to head over to this shot, and we're going to look at sort of staggering animations in order to, create nice group scenes, okay, in a way that's not going to be too taxing for your time, basically, time saving. Very simple part, but kind of significant. Then I think we're going to take a look at this shot right here, and we'll find out how to spawn an actor into our scene. In this case, this particle system. That's something that you'll do very frequently inside of Unreal Engine. So. And then the last thing we'll do is take a look at adding a title. And titles are not particularly difficult to do. And in fact, they kind of work exactly the way that you would expect them to. But it's kind of weird because you don't see the title when you create it. And so you won't actually see it until you render it. And so it's a bit confusing. And I didn't really find a whole lot of information about it on the old interwebs. So we'll take a look at doing that as well. All right. So that said, let's get started. Okay. Close that down, and here I am inside of Unreal Engine, and I've created a little project for myself. And I've got a couple of audio files. I've got just my title blueprint, although I'll probably go ahead and create that from scratch for you. Got a couple of particle effects from various packs and things like that. And I've got a bunch of characters who have animations. Okay. And that said, let's go ahead and get started. So, the first thing that I'm going to do when I begin to work with my scene, okay, there's actually a Roman palace here, okay, sorry, we can't actually see it at the moment because there's no lighting in the scene. I'm going to use a little plugin here called the Ultra Dynamic Sky in order to create my lighting, because I think it looks great. It gives me nice control over the clouds and things like that. You can use the standard sky as well, and it will work just fine. But I'm just going to drag this into my scene and let there be light, and pretty cool. All right, see, here I am. I'm also going to change the time of day on the Ultra Dynamic Sky. I'm going to set that to maybe 6 o'clock, roughly. Okay, that way we'll get a nice little sort of sunsetty vibe. Maybe even a little later. Let's go 6:30. Nah, too late. Maybe set that back to 6 o'clock. Cool. Um, sorry about that. All right. So, when I am working with a cinematic, one thing that I absolutely want to do is connect a controller to the scene. Okay. I do not want to be mousing around and trying to deal with all of the camera moves and stuff like that using the mouse. It gets kind of, it's annoying. to be honest with you. So, I would much rather use a controller, and so that's what I am doing right now. Once you have the controller in, you can navigate around the viewport by using your left stick to go forward or backward or side to side. And that's actually physically moving the camera, okay? If you use the right stick, you can pan, okay? To the left, to the right. You can tilt up, you can tilt down. But there you are not moving the camera. However, you can move the camera up and down with the trigger buttons. Okay, so that's right trigger and left trigger will bring it down. Okay, so those are kind of the controls that you have, and very, very helpful. One thing to be aware of though is that sometimes, particularly if I'm up close here and I want to do some kind of, subtle movement, it gets a little bit fast. So up here in the corner, okay, up here in the right-hand corner, we have the camera speed. That's currently set to 4, which is nice for zooming around the scene as a whole. But if I'm going to be up close and personal with a character or something, I might want to make that a little bit lower. So if I set that to 1 instead, the camera is going to move pretty slowly, and that, to be honest with you, is kind of what I want. Now, one thing that you'll see actually is this character is made out of marble, and so there's reflections. And one of the things that I'm getting over here is actually uh, reflections from the rest of the scene and stuff that we're not actually seeing on camera. And that is because we currently have ray tracing enabled on this. And I gotta say, if you're making a cinematic that's going to be pre-rendered, I don't see why you wouldn't be using ray tracing. It's gonna definitely make your shadows look better, your ambient occlusion look better. It's gonna make your reflections look better. And it's wonderful because the player doesn't actually have to have a computer capable of supporting real-time ray tracing in order to get those effects. So I would strongly recommend, if you are doing a cinematic, if you're doing a pre-rendered cutscene, by all means turn that RTX on, especially if you've got I don't know, especially if you've got an NVIDIA card. All right, so there we go. Now let's get into our actual sequence here. All right. So the way that we create a sequence is by, or the way that we create a cutscene is by creating sequences. So the first thing I'm going to do, create a new folder. I'm going to call this folder sequences. Okay. And the first sequence that I'm going to create is going to be kind of like a master sequence. If you have any experience using video editing software, this is kind of like the sequence where you drag your clips and sort of build your video. Okay, so I'm going to create a level sequence, call it ls master sequence. Okay, and I can just open that up, and as you'll see, it is basically empty. Okay, there's nothing here. And you might think we're going to add a camera or something, but that's not what I'm going to be using the master sequence for. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to build out a bunch of different shots, and we're going to use this master sequence to put those shots in order. Okay, so what I am going to do is basically create a shot track. Okay, and from here, I'm going to be able to add my different shots and their associated camera moves and stuff. Now, one track that I am going to add to this, however, is my audio track. Okay, so I'm going to add an audio track right here. And let's take a look at the audio that we're going to play. All right, if I go into my content drawer, I go into my audio, what I did was I recorded a little bit of narration. And
It was a time of war, and so our priests had gotten it into their heads.
well, there you go. All right, so that's the narration. I pre-mixed this actually in Audition, so there's a little bit of and there's the dialogue narration actually that's happening, and there's also a bit of music that plays. You can actually see that in the waveform, right? It begins to get pretty loud right there toward the end. All right, so this is kind of the audio that I want to make use of. All right, and so what I'm going to do is go into my sequencer, and on that audio track, I'm going to click on the Add Audio button. And here I can just look for my narration track, okay? And there it is. Now if I hit play,
It was a time of war, and so a priest
I'm going to hear the narration. And that's going to enable me to basically sort of determine the exact length of the shots that I want. All right, cool. So let's go back to our content browser here, go back to our sequences folder, and now it's time to create our first shot. So to do that, I'm going to do the same exact thing that I just did, which is to create a new sequence, okay? So I'm going to go up to animation, level sequence, add a level sequence. I'm going to call this ls underscore shot 01, shot 1, okay? And I can now open up that shot, and this time the first thing that I want to add is in fact a camera, okay? I'm going to add that camera right there, and when I do that, you'll see that I get the pillars on the side of the screen, and that is because my camera is going to be recording 16:9 high definition video, okay? And that's what it does by default, okay? So that is pretty cool. And as you can see right up here, it says Pilot Active Cine Camera Actor, which means that I can kind of, if I click somewhere in the viewport, I can then actually begin to move this camera, okay? And wherever I pilot this camera, wherever I move this camera, that is going to be the shot that the player is going to see when we play this sequence. Wow, that's something. Okay, so there we go. Now, animating a camera is a piece of cake, but what I want to do before I start animating the camera is I want to go ahead and go back into my scene, and I want to place the priest, okay? There's going to be like this priest who's summoning the whatever, the wind and the rain and the earth and the fire and whatever, right? That's the story of the game, I guess. So, all right. So in order to go back to the scene, you see this little camera here on this this camera track. I'm just going to click off it, okay? And now I am back in my scene. All right. And I can just kind of scroll around and go wherever I want to and do my thing. And my thing currently is going into my content drawer, going down to characters, and I'm going to find the character that I want to add to the scene, which is a priest. Okay, and there's the priest, and I'm just going to drop that priest right over there on that pillar, and I'm going to use the F key to zoom in close to the priest. Did I drop two of them? I think I dropped two of them. Oops. Okay, so there is my priest. I'm going to turn my priest around. Okay, and so that the priest is basically facing forward. I'm going to move the priest a little bit forward so that they're on this the stone bit of this pillar rather than on the marble back here. And what I want to do now is actually have this priest do their idle animation. Okay. Now what I don't want to do, okay, is muck around over here with the animation blueprints or the animation cloud. I don't need to do any of that stuff over there. That's for when you're, making your game, okay? And that stuff is really important, particularly if you're going to have a cutscene that's playing while the player is doing the game. Yeah, all right, that stuff gets important. However, if we're just making a cinematic, this stuff is easy as pie. It is so much fun to play around with this. So I got my priest selected. What I'm going to do is I got to add this priest into the sequencer. Okay, I got to add this priest into shot 1. Okay, and that way I'm going to be able to control the priest. So I go over to plus track. I'm going to add a track. Go up to actor to sequencer, and we're just going to add the priest. Okay, so now the priest is in here. And I could, if I wanted to, animate the position, rotation, or scale of the priest. That'd be kind of weird, so I don't think I'm going to do that. However, what I am going to do is add an animation. So I'm going to go add animation. And I think the one that I'm going to use is this idle 1. Okay. Now the priest is ugly. The model is pretty bad. The topology is not great. I didn't have tons of time to work on this, right? So I get all this stretching and stuff like that. So we're also going to make the point that when you are Making a movie, unlike when you're making a game, you get to choose what we're actually going to see of this character, and that can be quite helpful actually. So we're just going to frame our shots in a way that we're not going to see that sort of ugliness, right? So if I go ahead and I play this, right, the character does that idle animation, but they only do it once, and I need that character to be doing this animation throughout the entire course of this shot. So all I need to do in order to make it loop, there's no setting. I don't have a tick box where I say start looping the animation, but I can just actually manually drag out the animation, and it's going to basically keep duplicating itself for as long as I drag it out. Now if I play back the shot, you'll see, there we go. It just keeps looping until we reach the end of the shot. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and create our camera move, okay? So the way that I'm going to do that is, first thing, I want to go back to looking at my shot, right? Because right now I'm looking at the world, okay? And that's great for adding actors into the environment and stuff like that, but I need to see what my camera is looking at. So I'm just going to go back to that little camera icon right over here under the Cine Camera Actor, turn that icon on, boom, here I am. I am back looking through my camera. Okay. Now it helps here if you know a little bit about filmmaking and how cameras work. Okay. What I want to do is get some nice. I want to get a nice looking beauty shot. Okay. So kind of what I want to do is basically compress this background. Okay, the background here, I'm basically I'm using like a 35-degree angle, which is technically it's a normal lens. Okay, it's a normal focal length, and it's kind of which means it's relatively close to like what your eye would actually see. What I want to do is have a much more artistic, let's say, look to this. I want to give it kind of the look of a portrait. I want to get some nice out of focus background. And the way that I'm going to do that is by actually adding a 1 here. I'm going to use a 135 millimeter lens to look at this character. And the first thing that you notice, obviously, is that we get super close up. That's not, not a very good look. So what I'm going to do is just using my controller, I'm going to move this camera back, okay, until I get the framing that I want for this character. I'm going to look fairly head on. Probably going to go up a little bit. I want to be looking up at the character, but I also want it to be kind of occupying that frame there. Let's go. We'll just keep it like that. Okay. Now, of course, the problem here is that the character is all out of focus, and that's what happens when you use a 135 millimeter lens with an aperture of 2.8. I can make it even blurrier if I drop that down to, like, let's say 1.2, right? 1.2, nice fast lens. It's beautiful for doing portraits. It's great if you're shooting in low light too, but we don't have to worry about that because we're doing everything virtually. It's awesome. We have total freedom. I love Unreal. It's so much nicer than actually making movies. All right, cool. So what we want to do now is actually make sure that our character is in focus, and so we can adjust that by adjusting the manual focus distance. All right, so basically it's I'm going to drag this down more or less to 0. And then I'm going to start dragging it up until my character comes into focus. Okay. And I want to make sure that that character is super sharp. Okay. Because at 1.2, there's not a whole lot of that image that's going to be sharp. Okay. And as you can see, the background is very, very blurry. But it's going to look hot when we actually animate this thing. So let's go ahead and start animating our camera move. One thing that I'm going to do is actually set a keyframe for this manual focus distance because I know that I'm going to be changing that. And the other thing that I want to keyframe is the camera's transform. Okay, so the transform is, of course, the location, the rotation, and the scale of the camera, right? And that is what we're going to be changing right now. We're going to be changing the location and probably also the rotation. You don't really change the scale on cameras unless you're, you know, getting a little nutty. All right, so here we go. I have just gone to the end of the clip by clicking right down here, which says to the end of the shot, which is where I want to be. And then I'm just basically going to move this camera down, and I'm going to look for my good friend, the priest. Okay, we should get there eventually. There we go. There is our good buddy, the priest. Okay, and I might move the camera over slightly, or I could even possibly pan the camera, move it over so that the priest is actually going to be sort of between the legs. That way it won't get lost in that marble. Okay. Have him on this side of the frame. Could be interesting. It's not the way that I did it in the original clip there, but hey, we can play with things. That's pretty fun. All right, so I got the priest here. I got my camera is positioned now. All I have to do is set a new keyframe. Okay, and then if I go back to the beginning and hit play, here's my shot. That's a little fast. Okay, that is a pretty fast shot, but we can actually adjust that. That's very simple to fix up. But what I want to do first, before I start messing around with the timing of my shot, I just want to make sure that this character is now in focus. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adjust this manual focus distance. And it's going to create a new keyframe over here, right? So what will happen now is if I go back to the beginning, it's going to start changing the focal distance. The statue is going to start getting out of focus. And by the time I get to that, at the very end, boom, my priest is in focus. Now I could, since I'm kind of moving down the body and everything, and who knows, maybe I want that to be very much in focus, right? So all I need to do is drag that original keyframe. If I drag that original keyframe down there, right, then it's not going to start to do the focus shift until I'm almost down by the priest, okay? And the shift will happen a lot faster. So take a look at it. Here you go. We start, we're in focus, and boom. Now we're just going into focus as we get to the end of the shot. And that's pretty cool. That looks pretty hot. Now I do, like I said, I do kind of want this shot to be a little bit longer, I think, than what I'm seeing here. Let's take a look at how long we want it to be. And the way that I'm going to do that is by going I'm going to save this. Okay, first of all, I'm going to save this sequence. And I'm going to go over into my other master sequence where I've got that, where I got the audio set up, right? Let's just give this a listen.
It was a time of war, and so our priests had gotten it into their heads that...
Okay. Now, that is kind of...
that the best course of...
That the best course of action. All right. So I think that I'm probably going to want this to be roughly, I don't know, probably about 165 frames. So this might actually work pretty well. All right. However, let's go ahead and we're going to change the duration of our final clip here. Okay. For the moment, I'm just going to set this to be, let's say 1500 frames. Okay, so that'll make this this clip a whole lot longer, and I can make it last longer by simply dragging this red line. Okay, and that way, if I hit play, it's going to keep playing until we get all the way over to that red line. Okay. Alrighty. So, all right. So now I've got this shot. Let's just go ahead and have some fun. Let's make use of it, okay? So I'm going to go into the sequencer again, and we've got this shot list, and the way that I'm going to begin to create my cinematic is just by clicking on Add Shot. Boom, there's my shot one, okay? and it's going to add it wherever my timeline head is located, right? So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drop that right back there at the beginning, and now we can kind of see what's happening. And if I want to look at this cinematic, once again, I just need to click on this little camera icon, which will lock the viewport to the shots. Okay, let's take a look and a listen.
It was a time of war, and so our priests had gotten it into their heads that the best course of action would be to...
Okay, which is pretty cool. The one thing that I'm thinking though is that I would like that camera move maybe linger a little bit longer on this I want it to kind of start a little bit slower. Okay, so let's take a look at a way that we could do that, right? What I am gonna do is go into my shot one, okay, and let's look at the shot, okay, and so I'm gonna look at how the camera moves to around there, okay, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a keyframe for the transform on the camera when the camera's right there, okay. Okay, and so it just kind of moves down there. But what I'm going to do in order to lengthen that shot a little bit is move that keyframe down. So it's going to start off a little bit slower, okay, and then kind of go a little bit faster down to the old priest, okay. Now I'm kind of curious, when do we say priest? So I'm going to go into this my master clip, and I'm going to listen to it.
Time of war, and so our priests had got...
And so I'm hearing priests around frame 60, frame 55.
So
yeah, right around frame 60. Yeah. So what I'm going to do here is actually go ahead and we could do like a crazy fast whip pan, okay, by grabbing this. And let's see what happens if we bring this all the way up to like 60. Okay. If we do this, it's going to be nuts, but okay. Boop. And then we could also have the we can make sure that our focus distance is also changing it around the same time, right? So we can move the focus distance there so that it's at the same spot, and do boop, which could be a fun shot. I don't know. Once again,
it was a time of war, and
oh, sorry. Let's look at the shots, right?
It was a time of war, and so our priests had gotten it into their heads that the best course of action would...
And there you go. All right. So once again, the point here is not to duplicate what I did. It is to show you how to begin animating your camera, right? And that's kind of how it's done. All right. You can play around with your, in particular, your. Sorry. Let me bring up that shot one. Okay, so you can basically play around with your aperture in order to control, how much of your image is going to be out of focus. You can play around with your focal length, and that's going to have a big effect on sort of how compressed your scene looks. You want your scene to look giant and your characters to look relatively small against the background. Then you're going to want to use your 35 millimeter, 24. Who knows? Go down to like 12 millimeters, and you're going to have a very exaggerated background. If you want to kind of compress that background, make it and really put the focus on the character, on the subject of your shot, well, then you want to go ahead and increase that focal length. Use your 85, 135, 200 millimeters. Heck, you could go as high as you want. The wonderful thing here is, man, in real life, getting a 135 millimeter f1.2 lens is going to cost you, thousands of dollars. And here inside of Unreal, you get it all for free. It's awesome. I love it. I can't get enough of this stuff, guys. I cannot get enough of this. It's all right. So there you go. That is kind of how you can pull off shot one. If you want to go ahead and watch the video on the channel and recreate exactly the sequence, then go ahead and do that. But that is the main point I wanted to get across here, which is how to begin animating the camera. So I hope you found that useful, and I'll be back in the next video to start talking about the particle effects and the rest of the good stuff. All right. So thank you very much. I will talk to you very soon. Bye bye.